So, good morning, everybody. I want to review AEW Dynamite, and I do want to mention a couple of things before we start. That I really think for this video, it's typical AEW, which is that we have AEW strengths and AEW weaknesses, and to me, that means we have consistent problems with AEW. Like, first of all, there are some people that are not happy with a couple of the matches on the show that like Takeshita versus Kyle Fletcher, MJF and Kenny Omega not being saved for the pay per view. When I watch the show, it only feels like there's only one match for the pay per view, which is Willow Nightingale versus Tekla, and the pay per view is actually 2 weeks away, really. And I do not like it when AEW has a pay per view coming up and they don't build to it. They just throw in a lot of matches at the last minute, and I think that's what we're gonna get really. Um, like always with AEW, the match quality is strong, but the storytelling is not that strong. So I want to break down the show a little bit. The first thing I want to say is that unfortunately I fell asleep during the Jericho and Ciampa match, so I missed that. I also missed Takeshita versus Kyle Fletcher. But what I know is that Takeshita did lose the title. I woke up during the ending of that match. They're doing good back and forth, but Kyle Fletcher's move, that move where he hits the turnbuckle brain buster, like to me that is probably one of the most dangerous moves in professional wrestling, in my opinion. And it's always interesting, like how a wrestler usually spins on their head, or they do like a spin as they hit the top rope turnbuckle. Like there's a lot of just balance that happens really. So it's definitely a very powerful finisher. I like that Kyle Fletcher does this. I was actually very happy he hit the top rope brain buster, and that was it, really. It wasn't like what we've seen a lot of AEW stuff where it's like finisher after finisher after finisher after finisher, and it's not working, really. Um, but I was surprised that Kyle Fletcher won. But then I saw Wrestle Toddy, and Wrestle Toddy's channel, she mentioned that um, Takeshita is actually participating in the G1. So they have the majority of the G1, which is a tournament in New Japan Pro Wrestling. A majority of the matches that they're having, that he's going to have in New Japan Pro Wrestling, is going to be in Japan, really. So technically, he's going to be away for like a month or two to be in Japan. For because he wrestles for DDT, which is a Japanese promotion, New Japan Pro Wrestling, and AEW. He's contracted to all three. So this brings up a problem with me, that Takeshita, he's one of my favorite wrestlers. He has a lot of potential, but I don't like him disappearing for a while, because I said to myself that he should have held the title here. What would happen if he and Kyle Fletcher had a rematch at Redemption, like a steel cage match, and it was bloody? We saw it on the other side of Takeshita, really. I think that Takeshita leaving, it really hurts a lot. And I also feel it also hurts him a lot, too, because he just won the title. So what are you going to do with Kyle Fletcher, really? Because you can't really do an open challenge, because there's really nobody on the roster, in my opinion, that can challenge Kyle Fletcher, because because a lot of the baby faces are in factions, really. So it'll be like, who would you have? I would say Kyle O'Reilly, but then he's part of the conglomeration, really. But there's really nobody that could be a good opponent. There's really nobody that's built up right now that can go against Kyle Fletcher. Um, so I'm a little mad that Kyle Fletcher has the title, because I'm like, I think a lot of people are predicting it's going to be Okada, Kyle Fletcher, and Takeshita for the International Championship at Wembley Stadium. But I would like to see Kyle Fletcher have an opponent and defend the International Championship for at Redemption, but I'm not sure who would be that person that would face like Kyle Fletcher. Um, the next thing that happened was that after that, Mick Foley comes out to interview Kyle Fletcher. Then Mick Foley makes jokes about his shoes, and that he has like a dead dog, a dog that passed away. He's memorializing the dog with his shoe, and then the other shoe that he has on is to kind of celebrate the dog that is living that he has. One celebrating a dog that passed away, one celebrating a dog that's living. So it really threw it off on a tangent, really. So then what happens is that while this is going on, Kevin Knight comes out and he kind of talks about his title opportunity, because what happened was that if he because the Don Callis family helped MJF at Forbidden Door, Kevin Knight is contracted to get a title opportunity at any time. So, and I appreciate this because a lot of times with professional wrestling, sometimes they forget about this because MJF loses the title tonight. So many times in professional wrestling, you would have a situation where you would forget about it. But Kevin Knight saying, no, I'm owed this, and that's good, really. So I really appreciate that. Yeah, I really, really appreciate that. The other thing about it is Kevin Knight disses MJF, and he also disses some of the Don Callis family. So I do appreciate that because it's showing what Kevin Knight's weakness is. As Speedball Mike Bailey pointed out, that Kevin is very rash. He's impatient. He wants to kind of move forward in his career, but sometimes he doesn't realize that, his mouth can get him into trouble. Sometimes making bold moves will get him into trouble, really. He's definitely, impulsive. He definitely just doesn't see things through, really. He definitely causes he definitely speeds himself into problems, really, So that's the thing. And then Andrade comes out and he talks to Don Callis family. He talks about how he would never get a title shot with the Don Callis family. That's why he broke off, really. So this leads to another problem that what Don Callis said was that if you beat Jake Doyle, you get a shot at the national championship. And Andrade is cool with this. So the problem with this is that why is Andrade going after the national championship? Wasn't his goal the heavyweight championship? That makes no sense, really, because it's honestly like, again, Obafemi's talking about beating Brock Lesnar. Then after that, he has a shot at the heavyweight championship. And really, if Obafemi says, hey, no, I want to have the NXT championship, or no, I want the TNA championship, he wants the biggest, baddest title, really. So I don't kind of see why Andrade is kind of like, going to waste his time going after the national championship when it doesn't mean anything. The next thing that happened was that Darby Allin, when they're chasing Andrade, a bunch of members of Don Callis family go backstage, chase Andrade, and then what happens is that Brian Cage gets Darby Allin attacks a bunch of the members, tries to get Kevin Knight. Brian Cage lifts up the Darby Allin skateboard. It explodes on Brian Cage. That's like a spark bomb on it, and that's that, really. But it's kind of like a little repetitive, really. Like it'd be cool if we see like an exploding bag match or like exploding match with Darby Allin and Kevin Knight, really, at Redemption. So it'll be interesting to see what they try to do with this. The next match with Jon Moxley and Will Ospreay versus the Workhorsemen. And the problem with this one is that I didn't watch the match. I made myself a bowl of mint ice cream. And the reason why I did that was because, the Workhorsemen, they always lose on AEW television. I know, like, Russell Toddy, who I'm a big fan of, she mentions about, like, how Workhorsemen does a really great job on Ring of Honor, really. But it's not good when each time we bring up people from Ring of Honor, they're always losing. Like, why do you think there's people like Trick Williams or Obafemi or Ricky Starks, Ricky Saints, and a couple of, like, women who've, I think Tiffy, if I'm correct, like, why is it that they all go from NXT to the main roster and they're being pushed well? They're not, like, losing every single time, really, because then it would say NXT's a loser brand. But like with Ring of Honor, they have to say, hey, we're not going to have these guys lose all the time because that's just a little too much. The next thing was that was the gauntlet match. It starts with Maya World and Athena, and I kind of was saying to myself, I forgot that it was actually a gauntlet match. I thought it was going to be just those two. But one thing I liked about this match was that Tekla was doing announcing, and Mercedes was on the lifeguard um, on the lifeguard chair. And the reason why I like that was because they both understand, like, if they both understand that, they both be potentially facing the winner of this match, Willow Nightingale. And I like this because I like this a lot because obviously that's storytelling. These two, the champion and the winner of the Owen Hart tournament, they actually care about going out to see who's going to win this, and then dealing with the winner. Because that's good storytelling. So Willow Nightingale wins. Another thing that I liked about this match was that this was a no DQ match. So I appreciated people using weapons because obviously that makes sense. If it's no DQ, why not use weapons? But they didn't overdo it like a Mark Briscoe match. Like, it wasn't overly bloody or overly, just spot after spot, really. They did some spots, and that was that, really. They just knew how to have self-control with it. Will Nightingale wins. It's kind of predictable. A lot of people are predicting it's going to be Willow Nightingale as the AEW Women's Champion versus Mercedes, but I think a triple threat would be good. Like Willow, Mercedes, and Tekla, because I think Tekla's done a lot of really great things this year. She's really held up the Women's Championship, but you don't do something like say, hey, you know what, we're just going to not give you a match at a All In, really. We're gonna not focus on you. We're going to only focus on Mercedes and Willow. So I want to make sure that, Tekla gets some representation because she's done really great this year. After that, it's revealed that Jack Perry re-signed with AEW. I don't really care about this. Another thing that is that I feel bad for Luchasaurus because Luchasaurus said, hey, he's kind of like a bigger brother to Jack Perry. Luchasaurus has kind of been on the back burner. There are people like OTR Central and many other people that said Luchasaurus has a great career, but Luchasaurus has kind of been like, okay, Jack Perry's, lackey, really. When Luchasaurus is way more valuable than that. So I think that's really unfortunate that he's not being utilized to full potential. But also Jack Perry talks about wanting to become the AEW World Heavyweight Champion, and that's honestly never going to happen. Because, he's skinny as a rail. That just doesn't seem believable to me. The next thing that happened was Kenny Omega versus MJF. There are things that I liked and didn't like about this match. The first thing I want to say with AEW is that they really need to stop. One thing I hate about AEW, and they have to stop doing this, is that I'm really sick and fucking tired of them suspending the rules. And what that means is that they went into the crowd twice, and what they say is that the referee has the ability to say, hey, we can do a 10 count or we can suspend the 10 count. And I didn't like that they decided to suspend the 10 count. And the reason why is that because it's just unrealistic, because WWE doesn't do that. You don't do something like, oh, well, two people are going to fight in the crowd, we're going to do a couple of spots. But that means a regular match becomes a hardcore match, a regular match becomes a false count anywhere match, or lights out match. We're gonna just do whatever we want, but the referee has the ability to suspend that. This is why you knock out the referee. This is why you say, hey, it's a false count anywhere, or that's why you do something where you do shit before the match. There's ways to make sense, really. But what you don't do is just suspend the rules and then start following the rules whatever you want, really. That's just kind of retarded, really. Sorry to use that word. That's kind of dumbass. A couple of spots that I liked was that Omega does a moonsault off the lifeguard chair. Then also MJF hits a pile driver on a chair that's right by the guardrail. There was a top rope Hurricane Rana by MJF, and another thing that surprised me was that MJF uses the Dynamite Diamond Ring, but then Will Ospreay takes it away from him, and a lot of people were predicting Hangman to be in that spot, but I like that Ospreay did it because this could set up Ospreay versus MJF in the future because of that spot, and it ends with with Kenny Omega beating beating MJF really, and that's definitely a controversial decision. Like I said, for two reasons. The big reason is couldn't they say this for Montreal? But I understand if MJF is too injured, or they really wanted to do the show because they wanted to boost ratings. But this felt more appropriate for Redemption because isn't this Kenny Omega's redemption by losing earlier this year, then trying to get one more shot at the title, really? So it does feel pretty wasted. And the next thing that I want to say is that there are other people saying that, okay, well, MJF is kind of like a wasted talent for two reasons. That honestly, ratings were going up, interest was going up when he was champion, and people thought that he was going to be champion to Wembley Stadium. And the other part of it was that with MJF, he might be being lazy. He might be like, I don't really care. I'm paid very well, really. So if people want me to lose matches or lose the title a couple of times, I don't care. And then he might also be trying to be like Ric Flair or Triple H, where he's like, hey, you know what, I don't mind losing the title and regaining it. Because eventually, you know, that can make him a 16 or 17 time world champion if he does that, you know, just so many times, really, you know. But overall, like from what I watched, I really enjoyed the show in the as far as matches. But I do feel the storytelling wasn't good. I do feel like we're gonna have like a schmage for AEW Redemption. I don't feel like they're not gonna have the right build for it and make Redemption what it needs to be, which is a really putting wrestlers on the path to be prepared and have a story and have a motivation to be at the biggest show of the year. I think Tony Khan's going to screw the pooch on that one, really. But overall, match quality of the show was great. The arena was great. It was a new arena type of thing, really, to them. But one thing that really, really sucked was ultimately just the lack of build to Redemption. And now it's like a week, and of the next episode of Dynamite's gonna be a week away, and that's not enough time to build up like 10 or more matches, which they usually do. So I am concerned about Redemption, and it needs to be a banger of a show.